Good morning. We are here today to discuss Parshas VaYeitzei. We are still in 2025, and we are in the Hebrew calendar year Tafshin Pei Vav, and the title for the shiur on Parshas VaYeitzei today is From Theoretical to Actual. From Theoretical to Actual. This month, the month of Kislev, is being sponsored in honor of my parents, Dr. Asher Padeh and Dr. Ilanka Schwartz Zichronam Livracha. And in honor of the Hakaras HaTov, we, the Jewish people, have to Hashem for all he has done for us over the millennia, but especially now. It is clear Hashem has placed us firmly on the path to our full redemption from our current exile. May we continue to merit to walk this path and to reach the ultimate destination where not only the Jewish people, but the entire world will enjoy the bounty and splendor Hashem has waiting for all of humanity. And a tremendous Hakaras HaTov to Rabbi Zweig for helping to guide us on this path through his wisdom in the Torah as we are rapidly approaching the destination. That is from Dr. Padeh, and we greatly enjoy whenever he can join us for a class and share his comments as well. And I personally appreciate his positivity at a time when so many of us are racked with doubt and questions. Dr. Padeh is steadfast in his confidence that we are on a real positive trajectory towards Mashiach and a much better future. I thank him for that, and amen to all of that as well, of course. So Parshas VaYeitzei is fascinating in so many regards. Of course, it is the story of Yaakov Avinu finding his wives and birthing 11 of the 12 tribes, plus Dinah. We have this incredible dream of the ladder that Yaakov sees from the ground reaching up to the heaven. Some call it a staircase. And we have the promises that Hashem makes to Yaakov. And of course, we have his very, very difficult interactions with Lavan and all of his 20 years at Lavan's house. Now, there are a number of important questions I would like to get to regarding Yaakov, but first, just a general overall observation about the amazing uniqueness of the Jewish people and the ability of the Jewish people to maintain their identity throughout all the millenniums of exile, despite the persecutions and the wanderings and the tremendous challenges over thousands of years. Somehow, Jews have retained unique Jewish characteristics. They've maintained not only survival, but the ability to thrive in all circumstances in which they have found themselves. Most recently, of course, as Dr. Padeh was really alluding to, an incredible rebound from the horrors of October 7th. How do Jews do it? What does the Torah tell us about the Jewish people that would give us some insight into how this is accomplished, that generation upon generation somehow continues to succeed despite all the very huge obstacles where one would assume that most people would literally fall apart and disintegrate. Now, the rabbis tell us that the ladder in Yaakov's dream, depicts exiles, the various exiles that we as a Jewish nation have experienced, plus their duration, and specifically the seeming endlessness of our recent exile, which is a couple thousand years old, what we consider the exile of Edom or Esav, that is seemingly without end. So many of us are so dismayed by the rise in anti-Semitism. Here we go again. And despite having, Baruch Hashem, an access to Eretz Yisrael like we've never had for thousands of years, we're still suffering mightily at the hands of many, many bad actors, anti-Semites, etc. So, what does the future hold? And the endlessness component in Yaakov's dream, where apparently he sees the angel of Esav going up and not coming down, what's the ultimate message? So I would like to begin by asking a simple question on the dream that Yaakov has. Here's the background to the dream. Yaakov dreams there's a ladder or a stair case that is fixed to the ground. Its top is reaching the heaven, and behold, there are angels going up and down. And behold, Hashem is over him, and Hashem says, I am Hashem, the God of your father Avraham. I am Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the God of your father Avraham, the God of Yitzchak. The land that you're lying upon it, to you I will give it into your children, and your children will be like the dust of the earth, and you will burst forth mightily, westward and eastward, northward and southward, and all of the families of the earth will be blessed through you and through your children. And behold, I will be with you and guard you wherever you go, and I'll return you to this land, because I will not forsake you until I fulfill that which I have spoken to you. And Yaakov awakens from his dream. Now, this imagery of the angels going up and down the ladder is something spectacular. And as I mentioned, the rabbis learn that it has to do with a messaging about some exiles that will be for a temporary, so to speak, duration of time, plus the final exile, which is going to seemingly be without end. And then on top of that, Hashem makes specific promises to our forefather Yaakov about his children, about how everybody will be blessed through his children, that Hashem will protect him and not forsake him. That's the dream. So my question is very simple. Prophets, and there have been so many of them throughout the generations, normally get a word prophecy from Hashem, and whatever information Hashem is seeking to convey, Hashem tells the prophet. So why does Yaakov get a special image of such enormous cosmic concepts, such as the angels going up, the angels going down, the ladder from the ground reaching up to the heaven? Why not just simply say to Yaakov, they're going to be exiles, and some of them are going to be seemingly relatively short-lived, and there's one at the end that's going to seem like forever. Why do you need the actual depiction of the angels going up and down? And if you want to say, as Rashi says, that he sees the angels from Chutz La'aretz, that they are now coming down the ladder, and the angels from Eretz Yisrael are now going up the ladder, that Yaakov is going to be guarded by angels. Again, Hashem could just simply tell him, and I'm sending angels with you. And then you have angels here, and you have angels there. What is the point of the kind of cinematic experience of seeing the ladder and seeing the angels? What is the idea? Why not just simply give the messaging to Yaakov instead of showing him this incredible dream? Now, in addition to that, an important question is that Yaakov wakes up from this dream and he says, wow, this place is incredible. This is truly the gateway to heaven. And in the morning, he takes a stone that he put around his head, and he makes it as a monument, and he pours oil on it, and he calls the name Beisel, the house of Hashem. And he says a vow, he makes a promise. He says, if God will be with me, and he'll actually keep me, and preserve me, and give me food and clothing, and return me home to the house of my father, and Hashem will be for me, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, will be for me as a God, then this stone that I have made a monument will be a house of Hashem. What in the world does that mean? The monument will be a house of Hashem. He never builds it into a structure of a house that we know of. And if you want to say it will be the Beis HaMikdash, very nice, but that's going to be much, much later. That's going to be approximately 1,000 years later that there will be a Beis HaMikdash on this land. What is Yaakov saying? And that he will give a tithing? What is this idea that Yaakov is trying to convey, that now, Hashem, if you do these things, so then this will be a house of Hashem? Simply, what does that mean? And then finally, on this part of the Parsha, it sounds like if Hashem will do these things for me, then Hashem will be for me as a God, and then I'll do this thing with the stone. Does he really have a question of whether or not Hashem is going to do these things for him? Like, what is it that Yaakov is saying if to? The if is very difficult to understand. The commentaries seem to work on it, but it's very unclear. Rashi seems to go with the idea that he is saying an if. And Rashi adds, and you know what it really means for Hashem to do these things, and Hashem will be for me as a God? It means that Hashem's name will rest on me from beginning till end, that there will be no disqualification in my offspring. So when Yaakov says that if Hashem does all these things for me and Hashem will be for me for a God, what he's really saying is that his offspring will not be disqualified. They will all be kosher. They will all be good. That's what it means, and Hashem will be for me for a God. It's a very strange way to say, Hashem, please make sure that all my children are kosher, that I don't end up with a Yishmael, and I don't end up with an Esav, which in fact Yaakov does have what the rabbis call a perfect bed, because all of his children are fine, upstanding, kosher. As we know, they become the 12 tribes, but it's a strange way to say it, and Hashem will be for me as a God is referring to Hashem's name being on him completely, that all of his children are fully qualified to be the offspring of Yaakov. Now, there's another whole fascinating part of the Parsha that we've spoken about in the last couple of years, and it's just literally something astonishing. And we gave a very practical answer that I'm only going to mention in passing today, because I really want to mention that there's another whole layer to answer this very difficult set of circumstances. And the circumstances to which I refer that are truly just beyond explanation on a simple level is that Yaakov makes a deal with Lavan, that he's going to work for Lavan for 7 years for Rachel, the younger daughter. He does the work, and that night, when Yaakov thinks he's getting Rachel, he ends up getting Leah, her sister. And the next morning, he says to Lavan, "What did you do to me? I worked for Rachel." And Lavan says, "Yeah, but we don't do that in our town, to give the younger before the older. Therefore, you take the older now, and if you work another 7 years, I'll give you the younger." Now, I don't think it bothers us so much that Lavan would do such a thing, but two other things should bother us to no end. And that is, how could Rachel do this to Yaakov? And clearly, Rachel is doing it to Yaakov, for sure, as the rabbis learn. Yaakov had actually devised a secret code to make sure that Lavan would not pull the bait and switch. And Rachel gave that secret code to Leah, so that Yaakov actually thought it was Leah, because Rachel had given her the passwords, so to speak, to make it clear that it really was Rachel and not Leah. And from the sentence, it's very clear that in the morning, Yaakov was surprised that indeed it was Leah and not Rachel. But even more than that, presumably, Rachel would have made a big ruckus and made sure that the townspeople who were invited to this wedding should know that, hey, the wrong girl is getting married. So clearly, Rachel is going along with this subterfuge, but so is Leah. Now, our tradition for sure teaches us that both Rachel and Leah are extremely righteous people. How do they do this to Yaakov? In what understanding of morality and ethics and integrity is it possible that Leah and Rachel do this to Yaakov? That's one thing that should bother us to no end. And the second thing that should bother us to no end is that Yaakov sticks around for this. Now, most of us know the concept of dating or getting married, especially dating. Are there any red flags? Maybe there's something that a person should be aware of, that they should be paying attention to, that is an indicator that this is not the right person to marry. Now, if you want to tell me somehow, which is extremely difficult to swallow, look, he married Leah, he thought it was Rachel, he stuck with her, but then you go ahead and you marry Rachel and you agree to stay around this father-in-law who is scum and that did this to you when you had a very clear understanding, and you agree to stay there another 7 years so that you can marry the girl that you loved that stabbed you in the heart. That should also bother us to no end. Who would advise, what Rebbe, so to speak, of Yaakov, what counselor of Yaakov, if Yaakov was to talk to them the next morning and say, hey, you know what happened to me last night? who would tell him, you know what, it's all going to be good. Don't worry, stick it out, work another 7 years, marry this other girl also. It's all perfect. So it's very difficult to understand why Yaakov goes along with this. So those are the two questions that we've spoken about in the past, and we gave a very real world answer that I'm only going to mention in passing because there's another aspect that I think is very important to bring out that really goes to our title, which is from the theoretical to the actual. Now, it's well known that the rabbis look at Yaakov as the forefather that depicts exile. We think of Abraham as the forefather that represents passing major tests. We know he had so many major tests. We think of Yitzchak as the forefather that represents a more kind of personal avoda, service relationship with Hashem. Very difficult to understand exactly Yitzchak. We spoke about that last week. Not going to get that in today. And Yaakov is the forefather that represents the exile, as in the dream that we just mentioned, that the Medrash talks about, that much of Yaakov's life is depicting the Jewish people in exile. And so, for example, over here, when the Torah says, and I will be with you, and I'll return you home, the rabbis understand it's not only talking about Yaakov in his personal life, that 22 years later he's going to come home to Yitzchak. It's talking about the Jewish people that ultimately, after all of our wanderings, after everything that happens, we're going to return back to Eretz Yisrael. Hashem is going to guard us and bring us back. That's another way to understand what Hashem is telling Yaakov over here. My question is, okay, very nice. Yaakov definitely has a difficult life, and he's definitely outside the land of Israel for 22 years, 36 years. Well, actually 22 years. He's away 36 years, but 22 years he seems to be out, or at least 20 years, 20-something years, he seems to be outside the land of Israel. And then later, of course, he ends up in Mitzrayim with Yosef and the brothers. But what is it about the Yaakov personality? What is it about the greatness of Yaakov that teaches us about how we are supposed to be in exile? That's the question I want to address now. And so what I'd like to suggest is that what the Torah is telling us here about Yaakov is that he has this incredible vision of a ladder going from the ground and reaching up to the heaven, because Yaakov is a two-dimensional lensed person. That means Yaakov sees reality in two dimensions. He sees the very real world, what's happening here on earth, but he also sees the interaction between what's happening on earth and what's happening, so to speak, behind the scenes on the heavenly sphere, and that the two need to merge. So like a modern day example would be to imagine that you're watching a play or a film, and at the same time that you're seeing the play depicted, you also get to see all the camera work that's happening, all the costume work behind the scenes. You get to see behind the scenes and the scene itself all at the same time. That's what I believe the dream is coming to show Yaakov. That as opposed to Avraham and Yitzchak, where they, of course, knew that Hashem is involved and that Hashem is the master of the world and that Hashem can do whatever Hashem wants, including sending angels to Avraham, etc. Yaakov actually sees all of reality in the context of what is here and how what's here is supposed to lead to there, meaning to heaven, and how what's in heaven is actually leading back down to here. The angels going up and the angels going down, that there is a whole scenario that has two sides to the equation, what you see here on earth and what's happening behind the scenes, so to speak, from heaven, and that there is a correlation that goes back and forth. Behold, the angels are going up and the angels are going down. Now, the reason that Yaakov merits to see that is what I'm calling to go from the theoretical to the practical. And that means to say that all of the promises that Hashem makes to Avraham and to Yitzchak is to get to one major conclusion. That the children that come from Avraham through Yitzchak and through Yitzchak to Yaakov and then are produced by Yaakov, those children are how we get the heaven on earth. And so that's what we've spoken about several times, that the ultimate mission of the Jewish people, which is so important to bear in mind today, is that the ultimate mission of the Jewish people is to be a nation that makes clear the kingdom of Hashem on earth, that he is the true king, he is the true mover of what happens here on earth in the most practical terms. And the promise that Hashem makes to Yaakov in this dream is that the way that Hashem is going to interact with Yaakov is that Yaakov will know that whatever Yaakov is experiencing is Hashem's way of assisting Yaakov to make the reality conclusion that his children are going to be the children through whom the entire universe is blessed, and that his children will be able to be at the center of this portal between heaven and earth, so that everything that is theoretically possible becomes actual reality. So Yaakov is the one that concretizes the promises that Hashem makes to Avraham and Yitzchak in the form of a Jewish people through which all the promises of Hashem can come true. So I would therefore like to suggest that one of the hardest things in life that religious Jews always want to know is, am I doing what Hashem wants me to do? That's what we would all like to know. Am I making the right decisions that Hashem wants me to make? Am I building the family that Hashem wants me to build? Am I doing the job or the work that Hashem wants me to be doing? Am I living my daily life the way that Hashem wants me to live? And the reason we all want to know that is because even though there are very specific mandates that we have, many commandments, many things that we're supposed to proactively do, many things that we have to abstain from doing, there's still a huge amount of life which is not directly dictated by what seems to be the mitzvahs of the Torah. It's like we have to interpret the Torah. How much chesed do we do? How much learning do we do? How much davening do we do? And that's just like a rough outline. And one of the things that really throws us for a loop is we think we're going along doing the mitzvahs, hopefully to the best of our ability. Okay, we know that we're not perfect. We know we need to do more teshuvah, and we try to improve in that. And then something negative happens, or something just completely throws us for a loop when we say to ourselves, like, why is this happening? Is this a sign that I'm really completely on the wrong track? Is this a sign that I've picked the wrong way and Hashem is really not with me and guiding me and assisting me every step of the way, that somehow I'm really off the road? That's a question that I think many of us have, especially when things don't seem to go the right way. Now let's think about Yaakov's life for a minute, because I would suggest that Yaakov's life is the most bizarre life of all of the characters in the Torah. He's born second, but somehow he ends up buying the birthright and taking the blessings and being both, so to speak, Yaakov and Esav for his parents. Right? He's somehow supposed to fulfill the role that Esav was supposed to have. And in that process, he needs to run away from home. He needs to run away from Esav, which is how the Torah itself describes it later, that Hashem appears to Yaakov in Parshas VaYeitzei and says, look, I'm Hashem that appeared to you when you were running away from Esav. Even though what he's trying to do is everything that he thinks he's supposed to do. He's taking the responsibility of the firstborn job, so to speak, that Esav didn't want. He went to get the blessings that his mother told him to get, and now he needs to run away from home, and now he needs to go to Lavan and live with Lavan, the con artist extraordinaire, for 20 years. And he's told to get married, and he thinks he's supposed to marry Rachel, and he ends up with Leah. And then that ends up being Rachel and Leah and Bilhah and Zilpah, and he's there for 20 years. And then on the way back, he has terrible things that happen to him. Everything from Lavan pursuing him and Lavan almost killing him, to Esav confronting him, and Esav almost killing him, and to Dinah being kidnapped, And then, the way his sons deal with Shechem, it's bizarre. And then he ends up back in Eretz Yisrael, and the Torah says, Vayeshev Yaakov, Yaakov wants to live in peace and tranquility. And then Yosef is gone, and he doesn't know what happens to him, and he fears the worst for 22 years. Then he ends up living in Egypt for the last 17 years of his life. So on the one hand, you look at that whole experience and you say, well, Yaakov must have really wondered what happened to all those promises, and did I live this correctly or not? Did I do the wrong thing or not? Yaakov must have really been asking himself that question all the way through. But what the Torah is telling us here is that Yaakov came to understand that the promise that Hashem made him is that you have to do the best that you can do, and the proof that I am with you is in one specific metric. You are going to have the most amazing children, and they are going to be the fulfillment of the world. And the whole people of the world are going to become blessed through you and through your children. Because what you have to know, Yaakov, is that I am with you, and I am guarding you, and I am going to help you on this journey. And whether or not you do everything 100% correctly or not, as long as what you're trying to do is to fulfill everything that I'm telling you to do, then all your children will be kosher. And that is an amazing lesson for all of us. Because the secret to the uniqueness, so to speak, of the Jewish nation, and the way that generation after generation were able to produce proper replicas of what the Jewish people are supposed to be. And we know that. We know for a fact that Hashem considers every generation of Jews to be Hashem's portion. That means this is with whom Hashem partners in creation, as the pasuk in Ha'azinu says, Ki chelak Hashem amo Yaakov chaval nachal aso. That the portion of Hashem is his nation, Yaakov is the rope of his inheritance. That means going down from generation to generation, a legacy, a rope, a legacy. From generation to generation, that is Hashem's portion in creation. And the reason why is because the combination of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov leads to a Yaakov Avinu that partners with Hashem in creation, that no matter how difficult our current realities are, no matter how crazy they seem, that we should experience the horrors and the terrors that we do, Hashem is partnering with us. And ultimately, there will be a house of Hashem here on earth. We call the Beis HaMikdash. And of course, in the future, the third Beis HaMikdash. It will all unfold to a permanent establishment of Hashem's kingship on earth, with the Jewish nation as the ones that are bringing that monarchy into fruition for the entire world. That is the long-term view of Jewish history that will definitely unfold that way. But what Yaakov is saying is, if in this next journey, when I go to Lavan's house and I'm supposed to accomplish whatever I'm supposed to accomplish with marrying and children and everything, I end up back here, back in this place where I see this dream, where there's a whole cosmic background that is really servicing what is happening here on earth, then I will say right now, when I come back, that the house of Hashem is being established. Because whether or not it's actually a Beis HaMikdash, or it's just, so to speak, the Jewish people, it will be very clear to the entire world that the Jewish people are housing the monarchy of Hashem. And that is really why we have been able to succeed for thousands of years to not lose what a Jew is, our Jewish identity, and our association with Hashem. Meaning, when in every generation Jews declare, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, we daven to Hashem 3 times a day, we adhere to the Torah, and we say that our mission is to establish the kingdom of Hashem, our nation as a whole becomes the house of Hashem. We become, wherever we are, the place where Hashem resides. Like the Gemara says, that ever since the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, Hashem resides in the 4 cubits of Torah study, of halacha that we study. That's where Hashem lives. And that becomes obvious to the world. And unfortunately, when we are complacent or we are not continuing to struggle to bring the monarchy of Hashem to the world, so then, we can have an October 7th, and we can have other exiles happen. We can have very bad things happen because we're falling away from the mission. But Yaakov Avinu's mission is to make sure that he will produce a nation that is committed to that. And yes, Rabbi Chil, we're going to talk about your comments in a couple moments, because yes, I hear all your questions and I agree with your comments. And because of that, I'm suggesting that because Yaakov knows that there's a whole background from Shemayim that's working with him, because Hashem told him that's how it's really happening from this point forward, that everything that I want to bring to this world is going to become practically actualized through you. When he ends up in a situation like Leah instead of Rachel, he's convinced that that's Hashem at work. Now, I'm not only saying emunah, right? Emunah is certainly important, but also, like we mentioned in the past, he's able to understand what the messaging really is, what he needs to do for Leah, and what he needs to do for Rachel, and ultimately how he wins them over. So there's like a very actual real world relationship happening with Yaakov and Leah and Rachel that needs to be understood, and how he ultimately bests Lavan. But he has the supreme confidence that even though this seems like exactly what he was trying to avoid, that was the whole point of making this oral contract. Rachel, your daughter, not a different Rachel, the younger one, don't change their name. And it seems like the opposite of what he's trying to accomplish. He says, no, this is what I'm meant to work with. This is what I'm meant to deal with. And I have to step into that responsibility, and I have to own it, and I have to continue doing the best that I can in that job. And so therefore, Yaakov's strength, and the reason that he's the father of the exile, is because while he maintains this very keen focus of what the long-term mission is, and it's building these children, and it's ending up where we have a Beis HaMikdash, and where the whole world sees through these people that Hashem actually exists and is present as expressed through the miraculous survival of the Jewish people, the miraculous thriving, the contributions that the people that we as a people make to this world. All of this is something that Yaakov is teaching us how to handle our future exile, but more importantly, this is the secret of raising children that are grounded. Because the hardest thing growing up from a child into an adult is handling the vicissitudes of life. That's literally the hardest. How do we handle the challenges? How do we remain steadfast, knowing who we are, keeping our integrity, handling difficult tests, even though there's a tremendous amount of suffering or pain, because we saw our parents do it? That's how. And if we see that Yaakov is able to maintain his equilibrium, despite being completely devastated in so many different times in his life, whether it's Dinah or Yosef and other major issues that he had, he kept his balance and his ability to continue to work every situation to the best of his ability, including ultimately what ends up as being the famine in Eretz Canaan, and allowing his children to go to Mitzrayim, and then suffering through Shimon being gone. All of those things, Yaakov is maintaining his composure, even though it's very difficult for him, and he suffers, and he refuses to be comforted, and he cries. It's really hard. But at the end of the day, he maintains and he perseveres. That's a major lesson for all of us, and that's how you end up with children that actually can have a similar resilience and grit and an ability to maintain the mission in the face of all difficulties. And so because Yaakov teaches us that, it's really him that is called the choicest of the forefathers, because that's the only way we're going to get to the ultimate theoretical being actual. The ultimate theoretical being actual is that Hashem, who is beyond description, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, is very clearly our Elohim, the one who is guiding us in the most practical of ways. And I'm mentioning that because there are many sentences to look at here when the Yud Kei Vav Kei is used and when Elohim is used. And what really Yaakov's accomplishment is that the way that I express that I know that I am the ultimate partner of the Yud Kei Vav Kei is that I tithe everything that I have all the time. I know that my money is coming from him. I know that I have a reason that I have this money. I know that I have what I'm supposed to do with this money. That's where you call the rubber meeting the road. And therefore, a major way to establish that Hashem is really, so to speak, landing with us is by how we tithe and by how we commit ourselves to the idea of establishing a place for Hashem here on earth. So I say to all of us, in these very difficult times, we keep all of this in mind, right? Even though we might challenge ourselves and question ourselves, are we doing the right thing? Are things working out this way? Things are so difficult. Mamdani, blah, 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 right? All these things. There's a couple of things we have to remember. One is, yes, that is our fate as a Jewish people, and Hashem promises that Hashem is going to bring us back to Eretz Yisrael, but we have to stay the course, just like Yaakov does, of understanding that the mission is, I'm going to go back, I'm going to establish a house of Hashem. And part of what today it means, a house of Hashem, is to establish the right kind of children, the right kind of family that are committed to the same ideals. And part of it is literally the shul and the yeshiva that a person participates in to make sure that they are well established and can do the job that it needs to do. All of this means that we're properly focused and staying on the right path. And if we really have the attitude that Hashem is co-directing the play that we are in, we will be able to solve our most difficult problems with real-time solutions. So just like Yaakov is able to win over his wives away from Lavan, even though originally it's all, so to speak, plotted against him, so too we. We think, we're having various issues with anti-Semitism or in our personal lives. We can figure out real-world solutions as long as we have the confidence that this is what we are supposed to be dealing with, and not be trying to run away from those things and say, we obviously need to change everything because we're extremely uncomfortable. Keep davening, keep learning, keep asking, how are you supposed to solve the situation that is right in front of you now? And Be'ezras Hashem, we'll be able to have a vision like Yaakov where we really do see clearly that Hashem is with us. And if you have children that are well-grounded, that's one of the best testimonials that Hashem is sending. Any questions or comments?
Thanks, Akiva. See you next week.
Okay, great.
Hi, Rabbi.
Hi, everybody.
I have a question about the dream.
Yes,
when
please.
the angels are coming up and down, shouldn't the angel be coming down first?
Well, why
and then up?
Yeah, that is a very good question. It's an often asked question, and I don't have a specific answer for you today. I'll think about it a little bit more.
Thank you, Rabbi.
That's what the rabbis are saying, no?
What's that?
The rabbis are saying Eretz Yisrael, they're going up, and Malachim from Chutz are coming down.
Right. The question is which one should happen first. If you assume that he should not be left unguarded, maybe it should go the other way. On the other hand, if you say Hashem is guarding them while the transition is happening, so which one should happen first? Well, I'll have to think about that more and come back to you.
Thank you.
Definitely. So I would say that Rachel and Leah are, yes, participating in the subterfuge simply because even if you want to say that Lavan is forcing them, I think for very righteous women, I'm responding to Rabbi Yechiel's first comment on the chat, I don't think that they should not be protesting if they're not going along. I think we should be finding that they vehemently protested. At the very minimum, Leah should be telling Yaakov at the beginning of the night, it's me, Leah, at the very minimum. And it's very clear from the pasuk, it's only in the morning, behold, it's Leah. To me, that's very problematic to somehow learn that she's being coerced that whole night and is not saying anything, not to mention Rachel as well. So that's one thing. Okay, I'm not sure about your second point. I'll wait on that. But according to your major second paragraph, yes, I do think that this is what Yaakov is so badly bothered about with Yosef. He suspects that he has not accomplished what he's supposed to accomplish because maybe something is wrong with his children. And yeah, that is definitely what's happening in his concerns over what is happening with his children. But nonetheless, like I'm arguing today, even though he's extremely distraught by all of that, he continues to move forward, and he continues to deal with who his children are presenting to be in the moments that he's dealing with them. And it's only at the very end, when he's able to see everything in its full tapestry, that he's able to, I think, feel basically totally vindicated, even if maybe he could have done some things better. Yeah. All right. Anything else? Okay. I believe
Thank you.
Jess giving a class in about 15 minutes.
Yeah, I would like to comment.
Yes, Rabbi Chil.
But if you look closely to the psukim, you will see that he does deal with Leah's children. What can I say? In a very odd way. I mean, one of the biggest questions to be asked is when it comes to Shimon being in Mitzrayim, like, I'm not going to let Binyamin down, and who cares about Shimon? And who cares? And the fact that his children said, Aksona Yeo says Akosenu, he's like, Dina didn't count either. That's what they're telling him.
Yeah, so yes, those 2 points definitely need.
I mean, there's more than those 2 points either, because there's more than that. I mean, you see the fact that the brothers could not convey to Yaakov that they felt jealous of Yosef shows also a very big problem as well.
Yeah, so the only thing I would say as a backdrop, but I'm saying those points and maybe others also need to be addressed, but just as a backdrop, I think that part of Lavan's success with Rachel and Leah is to convince them that this is going to be good for them and good for their children. I think that's part of Lavan's success. And I don't think he's wrong. I think he's correct. And I think that in retrospect, we hold that way because we say, Yisimcha Elokim, Yisimech Elokim, Kasara Rivka Rachel Leah. Right? So we're very happy with who Rachel and Leah are ultimately. And the therefore of that is clearly Rachel and Leah have some kind of a major partnership going on in the raising of the children. And I think a lot of what does happen has to do with, meaning with the children needing to understand better what is the partnership between Rachel and Leah. Because Rachel and Leah are basically very good with each other, even though the Torah does talk about the jealousy that Rachel has, but ultimately they obviously worked it out extremely well. And I think that the problem is more in the children than in the parenting. That's basically a general approach I'm going to go with.
Can you repeat the last part you just said? I didn't hear that about the parenting.
I think that Yaakov and Leah end up very much on the same page. Like, just one simple example is that Leah never complains as long as Rachel is alive that that Rachel is the number one wife. She never complains about that. Right? Even though earlier, all she can do is say how much he loves me or doesn't love me. So I'm going to say that ultimately, Lavan was correct that Rachel and Leah would be fabulous co-wives, which is a very difficult thing to ever say about women, right? They're going to make great co-wives, which is what Lavan, orchestrates. And I think that's true because they do produce the 12 tribes, even to the point. By the way, the Sforno has a beautiful pshat where he says that the idea of Bilhah and Zilpah is that Rachel and Leah were adopting their children so that they would really be considered the children of Yaakov, not the children of maids. And the point is that they're all working together to make this tapestry that becomes the Jewish people, and there's tremendous alignment in the parenting. And I think a lot of what we see in the children is the problems that the children are making for each other, and the ways that they overcome or don't overcome. That's what the rest of the Sefer Bereshis is about. So I think the problem is more about what the children are doing than the parenting. All right.
Interesting.
More
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day. Please zoom over to my father.